Donald Trump just fully surrendered to Iran, giving Iran full control over the Strait of Hormuz, recognizing Iran's ability to coordinate all maritime traffic, all the traffic of tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. And it's unclear Donald Trump even knows the deal that he just agreed to, because Donald Trump is now posting, "We've reopened the Strait of Hormuz. The biggest deal has been made. What's going to happen with the failing New York Times and this news company? How could they criticize me now?" Donald, you may want to look at the details of a deal that you just agreed to, or maybe you know those terms, and once again, you are manipulating the market. So earlier this morning, the foreign minister of Iran, IRGC, posted the following message. In line with the ceasefire in Lebanon, the passage for all commercial vessels through Strait of Hormuz is declared completely open for the remaining period of ceasefire on the coordinated route as already announced by ports and maritime organizations of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, the key words in this post and this announcement is on the coordinated route as already announced by ports and maritime organization. That's the route that goes right by the Iranian coast so that Iran fully controls the strait, that Iran can charge tolls, that this is all under the coordination of Iran and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Now, the fact that Donald Trump would even spike the football that the Strait of Hormuz is open when it was opened prior to Donald Trump launching this unlawful and catastrophic war already shows you what a loser Donald Trump is. But not only is the Strait of Hormuz not open, it is now fully in the control of the Islamic Republic, as announced by this social media post right here. What is Donald Trump posting? Well, Trump is now calling it the Strait of Iran. And by the way, Iranian social media accounts are mocking Donald Trump for calling it the Strait of Iran. Donald Trump's post in all caps moments ago was, Iran has just announced that the Strait of Iran is fully open and ready for full passage. Thank you. Then Donald Trump posts, the Strait of Hormuz is completely open and ready for business and full passage, but the naval blockade, he's saying the U.S. naval blockade of the Persian Gulf, will remain in full force and effect as it pertains to Iran only until such time as our transaction with Iran is 100% complete. This process should go very quickly in that most of the points are already negotiated. Thank you for your attention to this matter, Donald J. Trump. Now, Barack Ravid, who the Trump regime leaks all of their information to, Axios is reporting that the United States is thinking about giving Iran $20 billion in exchange for Iran voluntarily agreeing to stop enriching uranium to weapons grade. It would be voluntary. It would be under Iran's full control for voluntary compliance. Iran would make voluntary disclosures that it is not enriching the uranium to weapons grade. But I just want you to think about how much weaker that deal would be than what former President Obama negotiated over a decade ago. It went from a multilateral agreement with real controls to ensure there was no weapons grade uranium enrichment to now voluntary disclosures by Iran, and now Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz through a coordinated path that Iran controls. Donald Trump then also says, Iran has agreed to never close the Strait of Hormuz again. It will no longer be used as a weapon against the world. Donald J. Trump, and it wasn't before you started the unlawful catastrophic war with Netanyahu against Iran to begin with. As we posted on the MeidasTouch accounts, he got the strait closed, disrupted the entire global economy, exploded gas prices, wrecked our alliances, killed thousands of innocent people, including young girls at a school, depleted American missile stockpiles, degraded our Middle East military bases, and destroyed America's global standing, only to get the strait reopened on Iran's terms and potentially give them $20 billion. The art of the deal, Donald. Our editor-in-chief, Ron Filipkowski, goes, nobody declares victory after losses more often and as loudly as Donald Trump. Filipkowski also writes, they only closed the Strait when Trump and Israel started a massive bombing campaign, killing their leaders and school children. It's also interesting that we can now apparently take them at their word on this, because Iran says, we won't enrich uranium. We got to trust the Iranians. Iran says that we won't ever close the Strait of Hormuz again. Let's just trust the Iranians. That's what Donald Trump's position is right now. And for all of the Lindsey Grahams and the Jesse Waters and all these people, we will control the Strait of Hormuz. It's quite literally under the control of the Iranians right now. Ann Coulter, right-wing commentator, says the following, yay, the Strait of Hormuz was open before we began bombing Iran. It's open again. Everybody pretend this is a huge victory for Trump, so he'll end this catastrophe. Now, the Iranian social media accounts are saying the following. Bad mood, Strait of Trump. Normal mood, Strait of Hormuz. Good mood, Strait of Iran. Now, Tasnim, one of Iran's state-run media organizations, says the following. Here are Iran's conditions for ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Only commercial vessels are permitted. No military ships or cargo linked to hostile countries. Ships must use routes designated by Iran. All transit must be coordinated with Iranian authorities, and the Strait of Hormuz transits will require Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps permission on a tanker-by-tanker basis. You show up with the tanker, you go right by the Iranian coast, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's right there. They ask you questions. If you pass their test, then you can go through. That is what Donald Trump has agreed to. You remember last week when Donald Trump was like, I agreed to the 10-point framework of Iran. And then he pretended, oh, I didn't agree to the 10-point framework. Once again, you've just agreed to these terms. And I'm just explaining to you what the terms are. There's not a dispute that the terms that Trump agreed to are this. Now, Trump will try to say that's not what it is. But it is. I mean, that's just like, this is public information, and we need to just deal with the reality. Iranian officials are also telling one of their other state media organizations, FARS, the following. If Trump's maritime blockade continues, it will be considered a violation of the ceasefire, and the Strait of Hormuz transit route will be closed. Now,
all right, I want to tell you about something I've actually been using and genuinely like, OneSkin. And what caught my attention right away is that this isn't just another skincare brand. It's built by longevity scientists, like people with actual PhDs who are actually studying how aging works at the cellular level. So instead of just covering things up, they asked, what if you could actually slow skin aging at the source? That's where their OS1 peptide comes in. It's designed to target these so-called zombie cells, the damaged cells that drive wrinkles and loss of elasticity. I've been using it consistently. My go-tos are the OS1 face and the OS1 eye, and what I've noticed is my skin just feels healthier, smoother, more even, and honestly just easier to maintain without a complicated routine. It absorbs really well, it doesn't feel heavy, and it just fits into my day without overthinking it. And this isn't just anecdotal. OneSkin has 4 peer-reviewed clinical studies, over 10,000 5-star reviews, and has been featured by Bloomberg as a leader in skin longevity. Born from over a decade of longevity research, OneSkin's OS1 peptide is proven to target the visible signs of aging, helping you unlock your healthiest skin now and as you age. For a limited time, try OneSkin with 15% off using code Meidas at oneskin.co/Meidas. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code Meidas. After you purchase, please, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. oneskin.co/Meidas, Meidas.
A social media account that's very close to MB Ghalibaf, Iran's parliament leader and the lead negotiator in these discussions between Pakistan as the mediator and the United States. This account very close to Ghalibaf says the following. The announcement of the opening of the Strait of Hormuz has been made under completely specific conditions and in full coordination with the forces responsible for the matter, and it will practically be highly limited. This passage, which is contingent on the continued implementation of the ceasefire conditions, will have three conditions. First, the passage will take place along the route designated by Iran. Entry into the strait will be from the north of the Larak Island, and exit from the strait will be from the south of Larak, and in this way, the Strait of Hormuz will be fully transferred to Iran's territorial waters. This is a historic, unprecedented, and enduring change in the Persian Gulf, ensuring Iran's sovereignty over the strait forever. In this manner, Iran is in fact carrying out an unprecedented rerouting of operation in the strait. The second condition, which is also mentioned in the foreign minister's tweet, is that only commercial ships will have the right to pass through the strait. The right to pass through the strait. The determination of which ships are commercial will be up to Iran, and this will naturally exclude any vessels with connections to the enemy, thus making the passage practically limited by Iran's determination and not free. Passing commercial vessels will also be required to pay Iran tolls for the security provision. The third condition is that the passage will be carried out in coordination with Iran's forces responsible for navigation in the strait, namely the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy. Considering all these conditions together, passage through the strait will be limited, subject to toll payments, and managed by Iran. And this is precisely what Iran has been pursuing since the beginning of the war and is now imposing on the United States of America, imposing terms of surrender. So I don't want to hear this ridiculous propaganda that acts like this is some major victory for the United States when it is not. It is a loss. It is a major loss for the United States. It is the worst deal, perhaps, in American history. You have Danny Citronitz, who was an Israeli foreign policy analyst for this specific region, for Iran and for the Middle East. Here's what he describes. And as our editor-in-chief Ron Filipkowski writes about his description, so over a month of bombings, lives lost, global economy disrupted, billions in taxpayer dollars gone, alliances weakened, depleted stockpiles for this. Here's what he says. I'm concerned that in this round, Iran came out with the upper hand. It demonstrated not only its ability to threaten the Strait of Hormuz, which it effectively controls, but also its willingness to keep it closed until conditions align with its interests while refusing to yield to U.S. demands. Only after pressure from Trump on the Israeli prime minister and the subsequent ceasefire in Lebanon was the strait reopened in line with the commitments tied to that agreement. The takeaway from this episode is clear. Iran not only holds leverage over the strait, but any future arrangements with Tehran will have to be credibly enforced. Otherwise, the Hormuz card can and likely will once again be played. Iran is not entering the next round from a position of weakness. From Tehran's perspective, it may have made tactical concessions, since it is clear that even any closure of the strait in the coming weeks, given the volume of tanker traffic, would inflict significant pain on global markets, but strategically it reinforced its core message. It sets the terms in this arena and will not accept dictates in this way from outside powers. And if Israel were to violate the ceasefire, the strait would likely be closed again. And Donald Trump's out there now saying, thank you, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar for your great bravery and help. You want to know what they're thinking? You just allowed Iran to control the Strait of Hormuz, you idiot. Good luck with us investing in more American private equity, real estate, treasuries. Good luck there, Donald. And then, of course, Donald Trump uses the opportunity to take a shot at NATO. Now that the Hormuz situation is over, I received a call from NATO. He didn't. He's just making this up. That asking if we would need some help. I told them, stay away, unless they just want to load up their ships with oil. They were just as useless when we needed them as a paper tiger. DJT. Other commentators are pointing out that if Donald Trump just left the JCPOA that Obama negotiated, the Strait of Hormuz would actually be open. not what's happening right now, not under the control of Iran. And there would actually be multilateral mechanisms to ensure Iran was not enriching uranium to weapons grade and not having now a voluntary system of trust me, bro. And remember the Trump regime's and MAGA's big thing about Obama, you gave $1.7 billion to Iran in cash on airplanes. Well, that didn't actually happen. What did happen is dating back before the Iranian Revolution, there were disagreements regarding whether the United States was obligated to fund certain obligations or not. In connection with the JCPOA, a settlement was reached through international tribunals to pay a resolution that predated the Iranian Revolution. And because there were sanctions on Iran, by the way, a lot of which the Trump regime has removed, American dollars had to be converted into other currency to make that settlement payment back then. But already, based on lifting sanctions of Iranian oil and what's now being contemplated by the Trump regime, giving $20 billion in cash to Iran for a voluntary mechanism where Iran says, trust me, bro, we're not going to enrich uranium. Donald Trump has done the worst deal, as I've said, in history that can only be interpreted as a full surrender. What are people in the crude industry saying? What are oil execs and oil industry people saying right now about the Strait? So here's what one account that covers this in detail says. Guys, if the precondition is cooperation with the IRGC and Iranian authorities and transiting only through Iranian designated lanes, that's not a reopening in any real sense. The ship owners I've been in contact with say they're going to wait and see. I expect to see a partial recovery in traffic, but of course it will be limited too. So now you have all the data and all the information to truly understand what this is about. Now, knowing it, you may say, I like that. Thankfully, this is done. Iran controls it. This is all good. You may say, Donald, this is a great victory. I don't think that. I think it's the biggest loss. I think it's capitulation, surrender, and I think that Trump and Netanyahu's war crimes need to be held accountable in The Hague. That's my opinion, but I share my opinion at the end of this video. I don't load my opinion I go fact, and this is why I come to this opinion. Feel free to disagree with me. Tell me what you think in the comments. I read all of your comments, by the way, so please leave a comment below. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe. We appreciate you as always.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.